I'm Kelly Lemon.
And I'm Michael Paul Williams.
And welcome to the After the Monuments podcast, where we look at events and news about race in a historical context and see how, too often, history repeats itself. And welcome back to After the Monuments, a real talk about race with Michael Paul Williams and Kelly Lemon. And in this episode, we are going to dig a little bit more deeper into what we're going to be talking about for these next couple of weeks. We came up with some great topics and some great conversations. And one of the things that I want the audience to know, again, is we're both from Virginia. I'm from Tidewater. You're from right here in Richmond. We may have about 20 years, a little less than 20 years on us.
Maybe a little more. I don't know.
And one of the things that I'm excited about is the things that you write about and you talk about. I know because I did my own research on it. I have this love for Black Richmond. I have this more love for Jackson Ward. And so I know a lot about what you're speaking of. I also was raised on Hampton University's campus, and I played right underneath that tree. And so growing up, you know, I knew what it meant. I just knew my history. And being a Black American, you know, from the state of Virginia, people often go, "Oh, you're from Virginia," you know, and they turn their nose up, and I'm the one that goes, "Oh yeah," and you probably were too.
These are Black folks. We all come from Virginia.
We all come from Virginia, right? Like again, we started culture, American culture, period. So deal with it. But you know, some of the things that we're going to get into is who's included in the American story. You know, we just had a leader, if that's what you want to call him, say, Blacks vote just as much as Americans do, right? Yeah. And there is also, you know, as we're recording this, we are in a month or 28 days that has been dedicated to Black history. I can't stand it. It makes me cringe. You know, but if we don't have this month, is our history being told? Like, that's the debate. Like, who's telling America's story? So we're going to get into that a little bit. Yeah.
I in my column today, which is centered on Black History Month and the ironies of where we are now in the context of Black history, of suppression of Black history, I mentioned that we used to have these debates about, you know, we really need Black History Month anymore, or some folks like, I ain't feeling Black History Month. You know, this seems patronizing, it seems insulting. You know, it was rooted in, of course, Black History Week, Virginia and Carter G. Woodson, and then it became a month, and it was born out of a necessity that we did not get Black history otherwise. I feel like we're moving back toward that point. You know, it's again like Obama with the post-racial America. You know, I think the idea that we can dispense the Black History Month is from another moment that is not now, because history itself is on the ropes. Accurate, legitimate history is on the ropes due to government right-wing censors who are trying to literally legislate in white comfort. I'm not exaggerating this. I've never seen anything like it. They're trying to embed into the state codes in places like Virginia, Mississippi, Florida, pretty much that, you know, white people shall not be made to feel uncomfortable. Now, they would say these laws are race neutral. But who are we kidding?
To feel uncomfortable. Like that, like...
You feel comfortable?
Never.
I have never felt comfortable in my 63 years.
Never.
So, a teacher reached out to me who said, I'm going to be teaching about Ruby Bridges. If you don't know the story of Ruby Bridges, you've seen the image in the Norman Rockwell painting of the little girl, 6 years old, walking to school, and you see the legs of the law enforcement agents accompanying her to school because she was in danger. She lived that. She's still with us. She not much older than me. She lived that. Yeah. She lived that discomfort, and discomfort is a ridiculous word for what she experienced. It had to be traumatizing.
Yeah.
She lived that, and now we have politicians, ridiculously arguing that our children cannot learn what she lived through.
Yeah.
What is that?
That's because you're uncomfortable. Like that, and it makes me so angry that their level of comfort and we have to be sensitive to they didn't do that. They weren't the ones to do that.
And I think the parents to a significant extent here are projecting upon their children. The children can handle it.
Yeah.
Who's more resilient than a child?
And
the children can handle it. The parents are projecting their fears and their biases to their children.
And isn't that one of the reasons why we saw so many white people out at the riots, young white people out at the riots, because they felt like they had been lied to. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing that too on social media where the child is calling out the parent. No, I got questions. Because you told me one thing, or you made me believe one thing, but here it is. Here's the truth. And
it's not just the parents, the state and the public education system promulgated lies for generations about history. Mm-hmm. And now that we're trying to get to a more honest telling of it, there's this upheaval, there's this revolt against the truth. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. Critical race theory.
Oh, it's
nobody ever heard. We weren't talking about that. That wasn't a big conversation until these last 2 years.
It's all part of a strategy, and this is what disturbs me about Virginia's governor populating his administration with people from the Heritage Foundation, because right-wing think tanks like that think up nonsense like this, these talking points, because it's never the brainchild of one person. It's always a national kind of playbook. Yeah. And so they know very well what they're doing with this race baiting and this distortion and fear-mongering, mm-hmm. which is exactly what it is, to divide us, to stoke white resentment as a political weapon. It's despicable.
Yeah. Cannabis. I never thought that we'd have all these conversations about weed. In my lifetime. That's just being very honest. I mm-hmm. thought it would stay underground forever. Here we are. Black folks still locked up for it, though.
Well, we cannot, and it's been part of people who have been talking about legalization for much of my lifetime is, going back at least to the 70s. Mm-hmm. What we experienced with the social justice movement gave a measure of momentum to things that had been talked about, mm-hmm. but slow walked or put on the table somewhere or resisted. Mm-hmm. So it's all good because there are far too many people in jails and prisons for nonviolent drug offenses. And what we cannot have, though, is basically the creation of a new industry that enriches the usual suspects while locking out the people who have been hurt the most by the discriminatory application of marijuana laws. And that would be people of color, multiple times likely to be prosecuted and locked up for the same offenses. There's no, black people and white people use drugs. It's been documented in study after study. We like drugs. We use them at pretty much the same rate, of all the disparities in America. Mm-hmm. The usage of drugs is not one. But who gets prosecuted and locked up for it is another matter. And, we can't, we're in this moment where, it's legal. And now people are lining up. There's a level of hypocrisy to it, Some of the politicians who probably voted against it, probably, it's legal. How can I make money off this? It's been ever thus in America, that principled stand suddenly kind of melts away once the profits can be seen. But you can't be, you've got to, we can never have a real talk about reparations.
That's a word that I'm hoping comes up a lot during the podcast. Yeah.
And what reparations means and how reparations can take all sorts of different forms. The usual boilerplate response to reparations is my family didn't own any slaves. Well, nobody owned a slave. If you kind of buy those, like who exactly, whose family owned the slaves? Because I haven't met anyone who will own up to it. But reparation has a lot, the need to repair lives with us today in all sorts of public policy endeavors. You can't say that there's no one around who wasn't disproportionately harmed by marijuana law. There are just too many of them who walk among us, who remain incarcerated. You can't, I read a story in the Washington Post recently about a family who bought a home in South Side of Virginia, and came to find out that their family members had been enslaved on that property. I'm like, you paid market rate for a home that your family members basically subsidized, enriched. Enriched the family who owned them. Yeah. It just, there's something, what's wrong with that picture?
Yeah.
So we've got to always be thinking as we move forward to a more perfect union about what repair looks like. Yeah. There should be no public policy where that isn't considered, and least of all, the legalization of marijuana. Yeah. Okay, people have been harmed before we've reached this more enlightened and profit-driven moment. So what are we going to do?
Yeah.
After the Monuments is proud to thank Team Henry Enterprises for their support of our show. Team Henry Enterprises is a Black-owned contracting firm specializing in office, retail, medical, multifamily, and higher ed construction of all scopes and sizes. In the wake of the George Floyd protests, Team Henry is the very firm contracted by the city of Richmond to take down the Confederate monuments in Richmond, and by many other municipalities to remove other Confederate monuments around Virginia and throughout the Southeast. Learn more about Team Henry and how they can help your company rebuild, renovate, or design at teamhenryent.com.
Let's get into also, one of the things, I guess, that the murder of George Floyd, the national recognition of, people, the pandemic allowing for people to be at home, to be forced to watch some of these things, was the disparities with the poor. And the poor happens to look like you and I and our brown brothers and sisters, and public housing and what policing looks like to us. That also has just been, it's a never-ending conversation. How are we getting into that when we talk about after the monuments?
Part of it, one of the most important things we will be doing with after the monuments is keeping those conversations alive. Mm-hmm. And, we are doing it in our coverage here at the Times-Dispatch, but there is Americans, and Richmonders and Virginians are no different, have short memories. And can we honestly say that police reform, defunding the police, whatever you want to call it, is still on the front burner in America? It's hard for me to make that case.
You don't hear much. I mean, until something happens.
Yeah, more recently, we've had 2 law enforcement officials murdered. That's on our front page today at Bridgewater College. God bless them, and the fullest extent of justice to the murderer. We had police officers murdered up in New York. These things are horrible, but we can multitask. And it seems to me that the conversation about law enforcement is getting a short shrift right now, even as we still see evidence. We see videos online of saw a man who was just summarily executed by a group of police officers. He might have had a box cutter in his hand, and there were like at least a half dozen police officers, and he just unloaded on them, and it just we don't have the luxury of pretending there's nothing wrong and that there's something that doesn't desperately need fixing. Yeah. The mentally ill are still at risk, tremendous risk in their encounters with police officers.
And just mentally, just the mental that this has caused on all of us as well. There's a new group of people that are understanding mental illness and mental health because of the trauma, drama, and everything that's happened within these last 2 years.
Yeah. Exponentially, every aspect of mental health, mental illness is and addictions are on the rise, understandably, in this moment of tremendous trauma, which again adds a sense of urgency to our responses, and making them 21st century tactical, enlightened responses, rather than the sort of response where part of the law enforcement problem, part of the incarceration problem is it's all, like education, they're asked to do too much.
And not trained enough.
Yeah, not trained, not nearly trained enough. Yeah. But we don't, as a society, we don't deal with mental health in America at all. We don't deal with it well at all. We incarcerate the mentally ill. We execute them. We've got to stop treating health issues, health problems, and wealth problems. We've got to stop criminalizing them. And when we talk, people talk about what needs to happen with law enforcement. There's a holistic, systemic reevaluation and recreation that needs to take place that no one seems interested in pursuing, because everyone wants to feel safe. Yeah. But part of the reason people feel unsafe is our avoidance of substantive solutions to real problems, such as mental illness and poverty, and also because of the guns. Yeah. There are too many damn guns.
Yeah. Anybody can get one.
Yeah, it's an insane amount of guns in this country.
Yeah.
And that's a non-starter, because again, there's money to be made, and an industry aided and abetted by politicians that loves to stoke fear because it stokes profits.
We are so excited to be bringing all of these topics to this platform. And again, we are in Richmond, Virginia, and we feel it's the epicenter of, if Richmond can get it right, the whole world should be able to follow suit because of the racism that is embedded here from the start and from the ground up. what do you want the audience to take away from this podcast? Like, your ultimate goal for the listener is what?
To interrogate interrogate our political structures, our policy making, what we have been told is our reality, what we have been told is America, and to deconstruct it, to think critically about it, with the goal of coming up with real answers for systemic problems that we've never addressed.
Yeah.
Racism first and foremost. To not fall for the political okey doke.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of rhetoric out here, a lot of absurd rhetoric, meaningless rhetoric about divisive concepts in the classroom, which is an utterly meaningless phrase. The debasement and demonization of critical race theory. We need to be very skeptical of a lot of what we're hearing in the body politic right now, because that agenda is not an agenda. It's not a people's agenda, to be honest, including the target audience. People are angry. People are afraid. People feel a level of alienation. People feel like their lives aren't getting better. But they continue to support politicians who are utterly uninvested in making their lives better. You know, polls show that people want things that politicians have no intention of delivering. And we, you know, what I would hope is that what we discuss can be empowering in some way.
And I am looking forward to the fact of, like, I know you because I know you, but I don't really know you, right? And you don't know me either. And I am excited that these conversations are going to have both of our perspectives on what we know based off what you're writing, and me just being out there in the community and doing the thing. I also am hoping that we're going to agree to disagree on some things, and with our guest as well, you know, and the fact that the list of people that we're asking and hoping that are going to come on here, they're not coming on here just to shoot the shoot. You know what I'm saying? They are coming on here because they are experts in their fields, and their perspective is well respected. And they're going to challenge the conversation. They're going to give a different lens. And that's another thing we talked about, is that younger voice. You know, there's somebody that's 20 years younger than me that is going to come on this and have a totally different thought process, and is going to challenge us as well.
I work with and encounter young people whose perspectives are totally different from mine, as they should be, because they are born of a different time and in place, and I learn a lot. I learn a tremendous lot from them. No one really benefits from the preach to the choir, amen chorus kind of deal. What I would hope for, because I'm not an expert in anything. I'm a newspaper columnist. I depend on experts. What I would hope for is a forum for open minds and open hearts. Legitimately open minds and open hearts. What lends me a level of despair nowadays is that too often I'm encountering closed minds, to the point where people are just saying ridiculous things. The election was stolen. It's fine. It's fine for. I'm totally fine with creating a system where people snitch on teachers who are trying to teach honestly and legitimately about what happened in America. Just that stuff is not okay. Newsflash. If you want to go down the path of Nazi Germany or the Soviet bloc. This is the stuff you do. And the idea of American exceptionalism, that it can't happen here, is at least one notion I hope to disabuse our listeners of here.
Can we get canceled? Is there anything that we can say that people would be like, oh, because cancel culture is a thing, right?
We can't, censorship's a thing too.
Yeah.
So we're gonna, I don't think there's anything we can say here that'll cancel us. That's because I'm a newspaper reporter. Yeah. I reside in the fact-based world. I have opinions that are based on facts. I think, frankly, the people who hold elected office don't live in the fact-based world, and that's a real problem. So cancel them. How about that?
How about that? Michael Paul Williams, Kelli Lemon, After the Monuments. I am so excited and just ready to get into these conversations with you over these next couple of weeks. And we want to make sure that people are staying engaged with us. So make sure that you are following us on all social media, and definitely make sure that they read your column every week. And we do have themes, but news is going to break.
Yes.
And we're going to break it when it happens.
Yeah.
So
There's a lot of news.
We're going to try to follow the schedule. However, it is our job and responsibility to when it breaks. We're going to talk about it then.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So, all right, we got a journey to go on. Kelli Lemon, Michael Paul Williams, After the Monuments.
All right.
Thanks for listening to this episode of After the Monuments. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcast. After the Monuments is a Virginia Video Network production and produced by Matt Pachilli, Michael Paul Williams, and me, Kelli Lemon. Technical direction and editing from Bill Barksdale. Executive production from Paul Farrell, Diane Salvatore, and Paige Mudd. Will Royer provides studio support. Our artwork is by Krishna Mathis. I'm Kelli Lemon, and we'll see you next week on After the Monuments.